Hey gang, today we are going to take a look at soloing with triads and some strategies of implementing those triads into your lines. So let's go! Alright, so if you've been following me for any period of time, you know that I'm a big fan of triads, I'm a big fan of pentatonic scales. I'm not such a scaly kind of player. That's why I like triads, because they kind of open things up. They open the intervals up. When you play a scale, you're usually playing half steps and whole steps and, you know, major and minor seconds and stuff like that, as opposed to triads where you're jumping around in thirds and stuff like that. And of course, with some certain strategies, you can actually add in some of the scales with the triads, and we'll talk about that too. Before we get started though, make sure you like and subscribe and share and do all that good stuff. It's always appreciated, helps the channel. Also, you might want to check out my Patreon site. I will have the diagrams for this particular lesson on my Patreon site, so please go there. There's all kinds of great stuff there, and of course I'm adding new content all the time, so jump on board. I'll see you there. All right, so let's get into our study of triads. So today we're in the key of B minor, which is also the key of D major, however you want to think about it, the relative major and minor. And you have a series of triads that are harmonically, you know, connected to that sound. So I like to kind of analyze it from the major scale. That way I can kind of also use it from the minor scale and any of its modes also. So if you think of B minor or D major, let's think of D major. Let's think of D major being the 1 chord in the key of D. E minor is going to be the 2. F sharp minor is the 3. G major is the 4. A major is the 5. B minor is the 6. And then C sharp diminished is our 7th triad that is in the key of D. And those are also the same triads that are in the key of B minor. What I like to do is just kind of use a pentatonic scale to give me a basic shape or a basic position on the guitar. Of course, you can use the cage system for that. So let's say, for example, we have a B minor chord here. Okay, so I want to be able to see some of those triads. So, you know, you've got D major. Those are the different triads in order. You got D major, E minor, F sharp minor, G major, A major, B minor, C sharp diminished. And I think that's a fantastic exercise to do. I have my students do that sometimes just to kind of get familiar with those triad shapes. However, then you have to you know, kind of confront how you're going to use these triads in your lines. You're probably not going to play this. You know what I mean? You might play it maybe once as this little sequence or something like that. But I think it's better to kind of break them up you know, into different shapes. So the way I like to see them is in 4th intervals. So for example, if I've got a little B minor pentatonic or D major, however you want to look at it, it's the same thing, right? So there's, and I think of that as pattern 2 from the cage system. What I want to do is kind of stack these triads out in 4ths. That's kind of a good distance. It keeps them from running into each other, and then also they're conveniently placed on the next string so you can implement that into your shape. So for example, I have an A major triad right here. That's the 5 chord. So I can add that into my sound there. That's kind of cool. Now a 4th away from A is D. So, of course, D is going to sound great with B minor because it's like B minor, right? Now, a 4th away from D is G. Okay, so I can add that into the equation. Pretty easy triad to see. So you see I'm moving in 4ths. I just started from the low E string and I found an A major in this position right here. And then a D major. And then a G major. And the next one I would see would be actually a sharp 4 because of that kind of tritone that you find in your scale would be a C sharp diminished. All right, so that's kind of a, and what's cool about that is I'm grouping them on string groups. So I think that's really handy. So to better be able to see these shapes, I know it's can be a little difficult to see my hands on the guitar. I'm going to jump over to my little diagram and we'll look at them from there. Okay, so we have our little diagram up here, and you know, you can say, well, I've got maybe, I'll think of this as, first of all, just a B minor pentatonic here, because we're playing in the key of B minor, but it's also D major. It's kind of the same thing. All right, so there's our pentatonic scale, and that just gives us a nice position here, and we can infiltrate it with some of these triads. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of these now, and then we're going to look at those shapes I just talked about. Okay, so we have an A major shape right here. Okay, we also have a D major shape. Oops, D major shape here. We have a G major shape here, and then we have that C sharp diminished shape here, right? So if I was to put the B here and set that as the root, it would reveal some of the different colorations some of those different triads give you. And that's another thing about triads, is they kind of highlight different colorations. So for example, that A major triad kind of highlights the 2, it highlights the 4 and the flat 7. Okay, so if I was playing a minor pentatonic, that 2 wouldn't necessarily be there. So that's kind of cool. Now the D major is very much inside of that pentatonic, but the G major is going to give us the flat 6, that minor 6 sound. And then we've got that diminished one that gives us a flat 6 and a 4th. So we're getting some of those different colorations from these triads in this position. Okay, so that's kind of how I look at these shapes here. So let me delete this one, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to put every other one in white so you can kind of see the difference between these. Okay. Now, if we're going to go up to the next position, so now we're kind of starting on this A major triad here, so the next position would maybe start here on this B note, and that would be a B minor. All right, so you'd have you got your minor pentatonic, and now I can add a B minor triad. That's the obvious one. Now a 4th away would be an E. Actually, let me do that with a, excuse me, with a white one here so we can contrast them. Now we've got an E minor, that's a 4th away. Okay, now of course I can always add other notes to it too, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then we would have an A major. Oh, let me do a black one on that. Okay, there's A major right there. And then we would have a D major right here. And these are all just diatonic, and you can hopefully see that there's a minor pentatonic kind of right around that, right? So you can use your minor pentatonic sort of as a jumping off point, and then add in some of these little triad shapes. Okay, let's go on to the next one. You can keep doing this, you know, actually you can do it like 7 times, right? Because there's 7 notes in a scale, so from each note on the low E string. The next one would start, let's say it would start here, and this would be your C sharp diminished. This one's a little bit of a stretch. And just as a side note, you can reconfigure these to kind of fit your hands better. I just kind of like these because they all kind of start with the pinky. They have this kind of reoccurring shape, but I do play them in different shapes too, but that's maybe for another lesson. All right, then a 4th away from that would be F sharp. So that would be an F sharp minor. That's our 3 chord in the key of D, so that's a minor chord, or the 5 chord in B minor. That's minor. And then we would have a B minor right here. That's part of our B minor sound, of course. And then we would have an E minor right here. So this is a really great way to implement them into your pentatonic scales and such. And then you're getting some of those different colorations. So let's go up to the next one. You can just keep doing this all the way up the neck, right? So now, arguably some of these I favor more than others, so I don't play them all, and I've practiced them, and you know, like a lot of things on the guitar, I kind of confront things and say whether I want to pursue it or discard it, but they're all very usable. So that was D major, okay? So then the 4th away from D would be G, and that would be also major, because that would be our 4 chord in G. or our flat 6 chord in B minor, however you want to look at that. The next one actually would be kind of that sharp 4, which would be C sharp diminished, which would look like that. And then a fourth away from that would be F sharp right here. So you can see the roots of these are all a fourth interval away. So they're all pretty much going to fall underneath each other, except for in a few circumstances, like where you have, you know, the sharp 4 on the 4 chord, that kind of thing. There's a triad in that, or a tritone in that one particular position. All right, then we can go to the next one. You see, I'm just walking this up the guitar. The next one would start on this E note here. That would be E minor, and then right below that would be A major, right? And then right below that would be D major, and then right below that would be G major. And you can see this is why I like this system, because it really breaks. And you can really like implement these into your playing very quickly, unlike the kind of exercises where you're going. Now, don't get me wrong, I've done those exercises, but I find that they just kind of turn into an exercise, and I started thinking about ways I could actually implement them into my positions and my shapes and my fingerings and stuff, and I found these to be very useful. Now, if you've checked out my previous videos, I did another one called Restructuring Triads. So you can tell I've experimented with this stuff a lot. I really like the sound of triads. I think they sound really cool in your lines, and there's a lot of different ways to see them on the guitar. So my goal has always been that I want to be able to jump off, you know, from any note I'm playing in the scale. I want to be able to jump off into some kind of triad or arpeggio or something of that sort. So I've kind of investigated this quite a bit over the years. All right, the next one we'd start here on F sharp. F sharp would be F sharp minor. Right below that we would have a B minor, and then right below that we would have an E minor, and then right below that we would have an A major. So that's, again, you can notice that all these notes are on the same fret here. That's kind of a bonus here, right? So if I'm playing, that's like a B minor pentatonic. So I can get some of those triads injected into that sound. Pretty cool. All right, and then last but not least, we will be on, you know, because we kind of started down here on A, we're going to be, the top shape here is going to maybe start from this G note here. That's going to be a major. Now again, when you're going between, on the G, if you go a fourth away from that, it'd actually be a sharp 4, so you're going to get a C sharp diminished here, okay? And then the next one is going to be an F sharp minor from here. And then the next one is a B minor. Okay, so that's kind of your 7 shapes. And of course, I will include this diagram into my Patreon. So if you want to get that, you can go over there and check that out. But let's talk about some strategies for implementing these now. Okay, so those are some of the shapes, and you guys can look at those. You know, like I said, some of these I favor more than others. I like these fingerings a lot. Now, what I like to do too is I like to add some scale tones to it. So if I play this B minor, I want to see like what are the scale tones maybe on this D string. Remember, we're in B minor or D major. So I can add the G note and the A note to that shape there. And then on the E minor, I can add the C sharp and the D here, right? So, and I don't have to add both of them. I can add just one or the other. You can do something like that. You can make all kinds of cool lines out of these. The A, there's going to be some scale notes from the 5th here. You see, so I'm using those basic shapes, but then I can also see some extra little scale lines around them to add to it. And then I would have the D major here. Sorry. So again, if I was here, there's my C sharp diminished. I can add those scale tones. There's F sharp minor, and I can add those scale tones. Here's B minor. I can add these scale tones. Now, that's not one of my favorites because of that little roll that you have to do there, but I do use it. And then you have the E minor. You see how I can kind of bounce around those and get these kind of bigger intervals. So, I don't like to play like that all the time. A lot of times when I do these videos, I specifically overdo it a little bit so you can hear what the sound is like, maybe in the intro solo or the outro solos or when I'm demonstrating things. But, I'll probably more kind of just put it in with my bluesy licks and stuff like that, or maybe some other scale licks or pentatonics or something like that. I don't like do it all the time. Although when I'm practicing it, sometimes I do. I just try to just only improvise with just triads, and it gets a really cool sound, but it can sound a little disjointed. You also want to focus on melodies and stuff like that too. So a little side note there. All right, our next one would be, what we had C sharp here, so we're going to go to D. We got D major there, G major here, then C sharp diminished. That can be a little awkward sometimes. Got to get used to that. And then we got F sharp minor. Okay, so now we're going to add some scale tones. Okay. So each one of those triads, I'm adding some scale note from the fifth, going up and down the linear scale from the fifth, basically. Okay, the next one I'd have E minor. I can add some scale notes there. Then I've got A major. Can add some scale notes there. All right, then I've got D major here. Another thing is too is I don't have to play up and down those scale notes. I can rearrange them too. And then I've got G here. Okay, so you see I'm just doing this in each position. So then I go F sharp minor, and I can add some scale tones there. And then B minor, some scale tones. E minor, and then A major. You see how that works, right? That's, if you ever see me play or you watch some of my videos and stuff, that's a lot of what's going on in my head right there when I'm playing some of those lines. And of course we would have one more here, so you could do it, might as well finish it off. So we've got G major here. Add some scale tones there. C sharp diminished with some scale tones. F sharp minor with some scale tones. And then B minor with some scale tones. And that pretty much covers the whole thing. So, I think that's really clever because you can either play them or not. You know what I mean? Or you could play some of them. Or another thing is too is you can add some chromatics in between those. So let's say I'm starting here. So I've got the scale from the fifth here. I can add a little half step there, right? Another thing is you can play half steps into each of the notes of the triad. Oh, sorry. You can, technique-wise, you can do little sweeps with them. However you want to do that, however you want them to sound. I like to do little sweeps, but I don't always, you know what I mean? So it just depends on how I want them to sound. All right, so that's kind of a way that you could actually solo with triads only if you wanted to. I wouldn't say do that all the time. Might be good as an exercise because it does add depth and a little bit of three-dimension to your sound. But it can sound a little disjointed, so you want to have some melodies and motifs and stuff like that in there too. But it's a really fun way to look at the instrument, and it gets you out of kind of doing diatonic triad exercises and actually infiltrates some of these sounds. All right, so if you'd like it, dig it, share it, all that good stuff. And again, you know, help support the channel, check out the Patreon, and I will see you next time around.